Welcome to the TOCA Backstage podcast. Join TOCA's Executive Director, Chris Wolf, in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Hi, this is Chris Wolf, Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation, with another episode of TOCA Backstage. It is my extreme honor to have Alex Wersen from Remember When the Music, the Songs of Harry Chapin, which will be February 11th at 8 p.m. at the Armstrong Theater. Alex, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So Harry Chapin was an artist from the 70s, kind of a folky guy. He sort of came to popularity, I guess, when he did like Taxi and WOLD. What was your first connection with Harry Chapin? How did you learn about him?
I think like everybody, I think, who missed the big hits of Taxi and WLD probably know Cats in the Cradle, which I think that's the first song I know to have heard by Harry Chapin, and regrettably for a long time was the only song I really knew by Harry Chapin, until I realized I should probably dig into this guy a little more if he's got the reputation he has and has a handful of great songs that we're all familiar with. Awesome.
And so I do know, I mean, I know a little bit about him. I do know that he was also a big into philanthropy. Do you know much about his history? Or
Right. I honestly think his history and his philanthropy is why his name hasn't really stuck around like it deserves to in the music world, because he was truly about just making music for people and then giving all of his money away to mostly fighting hunger and more world just looking out for people and not for himself. He played a lot of live shows and was known to play probably more live shows than a lot of other, especially folk touring artists at the time. And even though he died tragically early, he didn't have much money then, and he probably wouldn't have no matter how long he lived, because he was really just giving it all away.
It kind of seems, I mean, it's kind of sad that here you have an artist that created these wonderful songs and was so into people and giving, like giving back, and yet it's like
you don't know his name, like Bob Dylan.
Right, exactly. Why do you think that is?
Cat Stevens, who sadly, more often than not, when I say, oh, I'm doing this show tribute to Harry Chapin, and if they kind of look puzzled, I say, Cats in the Cradle, and their response is, oh, Cat Stevens, I love that song, which is, I really think it's because he wasn't looking for the spotlight. And honestly, which he would make jokes about in his concerts, his songs were too long for the radio. So you really had to be in the folk world and the story song sort of format for songwriting. And like I said, he wasn't in it for the glory. He was in it to be bringing music to his audience, which was usually live, and give his money to the ones who needed it more, which is kind of antithesis to being a rock superstar or a songwriting legend. And the fact that he was in his early 30s when he tragically died. So he didn't really make it much past the 80s to keep his music going.
Do you think that I mean, like you mentioned, most of his songs are like story songs. Do you think that that's something that, because I know that like nowadays it's a lot of sampling, it's a lot of repetitive lyrics.
Right, you're trying to crank out a hook really fast.
Yeah. I mean, are there any more story songs coming out these days, or is it all just
I think there are, but just like 50 years ago, they're not on the radio. So I think the fortunate aspect of today, for all that the pop world and the internet has done to harm creativity in a lot of people's eyes, it also gives a platform for anybody to get their songs out there and for anybody to find their songs. So, I mean, I guess the closest would be the indie world, and I know there in the Americana world, there's still a lot of more storytelling types of songwriting, but I don't know that it definitely had a bigger moment in the late 60s and 70s with the folk era, I think, but it's still a bit of a niche, even though it could be and is a pretty large one. I'm a songwriter myself. I try to think I do a little more storytelling, but that's definitely an art to roll out these long, real detailed stories. I mean, he really paints the pictures. They're theatrical more than pop songs.
Well, and that's a nice segue. So for you, how did you start in the music? I mean, what I see from your wall of guitars, you're a multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah, I come from a family of musicians. I played with my sister, and my parents were both musicians. My grandparents on both sides played, at the very least, piano. So we grew up in a house of music, and just kind of always knew that we were going to do music. My parents never pushed us to do music, but it was kind of unavoidable, I guess. I went the instrumental way to start because my sister came out singing to the world and doing it perfectly fine. So I figured, well, I'll back her up and stick to the instrument side. And then I got into songwriting later in early high school, and she and I started writing sort of pop, folk, Americana songs together. We played with my parents. I dabbled in musical theater a little bit, but I was I more enjoyed it and watched my sister and my mom take part in it. And I loved the music of musical theater. And I've always had a dream of composing a sort of a Broadway show at one point. So I love music that has a whole lot to it, but I also appreciate just stripping stuff down to an acoustic guitar and focusing on the actual songwriting and the lyrics rather than just the melodic aspects of it, which has gotten me into both my own songwriting and appreciating some of these artists that honestly, when I was first getting started at 10, 11, 12 years old playing guitar, I wouldn't have had the patience or the appreciation for these longer form kind of folk story songs.
What so you've been doing music for a while, and I know that you do perform other places, on, like you said, either solo with your sister or other groups. One of the things that the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation does, besides present shows like yours, is we like to help encourage and mentor young performers. As a seasoned professional yourself, what words of advice would you offer somebody who's just wanting to get into music?
I think for me, I've always been somebody that thrives and enjoys making music with other people. So I'd say the first thing would be to find a friend or a community where music, like you guys provide for music. And then just if you truly love it, you just gotta do it and put it all out there and get out and play. I think one of the things that kind of bugs me now, with back to the pros and cons of the internet music world, is that so many people, the great part is, can learn. I didn't have YouTube to watch when I was learning how to play guitar. I was trying to find somebody in the neighborhood that knew how to play guitar. My parents were piano players or other instrument singers. They didn't play guitar. So these days it's amazing that the resources you can find for free online, and then you just got to go out and do it. I mean, there's open mics, and just don't be shy. There's amazing welcoming communities out there to both help support you and show you the ropes a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw your dog go behind you.
Back up, sir. Yeah, I realized I probably should have shut that door. They're pretty good right now, though. We'll see.
Um, so as far as, I mean, Harry Chapin's book is fairly large, and like you said, a lot of his songs are too long for the radio. Is there one that's sort of your favorite to play?
I think as I put this together and I've really been diving into the songs, Story of a Life is amazing, and then Better Place to Be are both similar in their styles, but just really heavy messages that, even though they were written in 1968, early 1970s, unfortunately they still resonate a lot. And just, you can apply Story of a Life or Better Place to Be or some of these songs, What Made America Famous, to today, and they're still super relevant, which is really what I want to do with these songs. Is, if people have only heard Cats in the Cradle, my goal is to really show people that whether they'd heard of him and tuned him out before, or didn't really take the time to listen to all 8 minutes of a song and get what it's about, that they're still just as relevant today. And so hopefully I can deliver them in a way that brings new fans and new appreciation to these songs.
Very well said. So the show is again February 11th.
Right.
Remember When the Music, Songs of Harry Chapin. I like the fact that you're wearing your own merch. So
Right. I know that's usually a faux pas in the music world to go on stage wearing your own shirt, but I figured, why not?
Promote it. It's funny because most people don't do that, but I think it's great, so people know that there's merch available. Why not?
Right.
So moving forward, what's your overall goal in the music world? Is it to take this on the road, or is it to create?
I would love to. I really think there's going to be, and there is, a market for it. I would love to hit other theaters and expose as many people as possible to his music and his sort of vision of life and how it could be. They're not all the most uplifting songs, but there's a market for people who want to kind of wallow together or be excited together, or kind of come together in a way, kind of, to, even if it's just to unload a little bit or find solidarity in all of his stories and people and characters that pretty much everybody, I think, can relate to in a way, if you've walked around and paid attention at all.
Well, it's funny because I know, like, the first time I heard What Made America Famous, I that line in the song, said the plumber that I'm going alone.
Right.
It's just like my eyes well up, and it's
know,
like,
right?
oh wow, yeah, no, it's powerful music, and I appreciate what you're trying to do with it. So when what do you? I mean, like you said, his music there's some happy, there's some serious, there's some hopeful. What do you hope people walk away from after seeing this show?
That if they are feeling a little despair about the way things are in the world, or if they're in a relationship that they're kind of unsure about, or that you can find, that you see that you're not alone ultimately. And I think that's what Harry Chapin's plan, whether it was, or his goal with his music or his money, was to let people know, like, look, we're all humans out here trying to do our best. We're all going through the same things. We all have struggles and maybe are a little fed up or frustrated with how things are going around us, but ultimately you're not alone, and ultimately there's music and art and things, at the very least, to help you help everybody feel better. I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, these are tough times out there or whatever, but when you realize like these songs are 40, 50 years old and they still resonate, that's like we're all in this together more than anything else, I guess.
Yeah.
And at the very least, hopefully they'll have a couple hours of forgetting all that and just enjoying some great songs.
That's great. I like that. It is amazing that some songs written so long ago, like Harry Chapin's. I mean, even some 60s protest songs, it's like they still resonate today. It's like the humans haven't really learned.
We're still working.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, you're right. I mean, music is sort of the grand healer. It's like even during COVID and lockdowns, it's like everyone was streaming concerts. Everybody was, I mean, they were looking for, I don't know if it's necessarily meaning in their life, but just something to uplift them, and they usually turn to music because it's the great healer.
Right. And a group, people don't want to feel like you're wallowing all by yourself in your own thoughts or concerns. And when you hear a song like Story of a Life, which I don't have any kids and I've only been married for 5 years, but even I can relate to a lot of what that song's about, just sort of appreciating what the good things really, I guess, and that you're not alone in the bad things.
Oh, that's great. Well, I appreciate your time. So again, it's Remember When the Music, the songs of Harry Chapin, February 11th at 8 p.m. at the Armstrong Theater. I highly recommend it. Harry's songbook is full, and it's some great stories in there. Alex, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. I just wanted to say, I think just for anybody wondering, like, is this going to be a tribute to Harry Chapin? Is there going to be a theatrical portion of it? I'd say I'm not going to put a big curly wig on. I might trim my beard. I'm not going to try to be Harry, but I want to bring Harry. It's going to be pretty stripped down and intimate, just a few instrumentation, little bit of instrumentation, but it's mostly going to be focusing on his songs and a collection of what I think are some of the most representative and best songs. So it's not a musical per se, so it's really a show for all ages, all music tastes, whether you've heard of Harry Chapin or not. I think you'll hopefully leave this knowing more than Cat's Cradle and hopefully loving more than Cat's Cradle.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, and we can't wait to see the show again, February 11th. Tickets are available now. Alex, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.